Between these two islands of Indonesia, there is an invisible and mysterious line that no fish, bird, or animal can cross. This line starts between Bali and Lombok Islands and cuts through all the Malay Islands. Although this line cannot be seen on radar or sonar, the animals, birds, and fish on the western side of this line are entirely different from those on the eastern side. Now there is only a difference of 35 kilometers between these two islands, but if you travel from Bali to Lombok, the whole environment changes drastically. The birds and animals on Bali Island do not cross this line to reach Lombok, and the animals and birds from Lombok do not come to the western side. And not just that, even the fish and other marine animals do not cross this line. So these two islands are like two totally different worlds that have been divided by some mysterious power, and there is an invisible line between these islands that, except for humans, no one else can cross. This line is called the Wallace Line, and it was discovered around 150 years ago by a British explorer named Alfred Russel Wallace. Those of you who have studied biology in school will surely know Russel Wallace because of the concept of natural selection. Now, Alfred Russel also has a very interesting story. He was born in 1823 in a poor family of England. Wallace's father was a cartographer, so he created maps, and for this he used to travel to different places. Wallace had a keen interest in studying, but due to poverty, he had to leave his education at a very young age and join his father's business, and this very decision of his life was going to make him very famous worldwide. Wallace developed a keen interest in geography and wildlife after traveling with his father. Wherever he went, he would bring back some plants, animals, and insects as specimen with him. This passion intensified so much that Wallace set out on a journey with a few companions in 1854 to the Malay Islands. He first arrived in Singapore, then he traveled to Indonesia and explored it extensively, before finally arriving on Bali Island. Wallace became very fond of Bali and its wildlife. He began to examine the animals and plants in detail there. He saw many tigers, rhinos, elephants, and various birds such as woodpeckers and parrots. He noted down everything he saw in his diary. Then he boarded his boat and sailed 35 kilometers to Lombok Island. But upon reaching there, he was utterly astonished. There were entirely different animals and birds here. Komodo dragons, kangaroos, koalas, and many other such animals and birds that were not found in Singapore, Indonesia, or Bali. Wallace and his companions were very perplexed about this. Now, a seemingly unfortunate thing happened, and Wallace contracted malaria. He had to stay in a room on the same island for some days. However, during this illness, he found time to think about the invisible line, and then a remarkable idea clicked in his mind. He realized that in Bali, all the animals found there, such as tigers and elephants, are those commonly found in Asia. On the other hand, in Lombok Island, all the animals and birds are those typically found in Australia, like kangaroos, koalas, and monitor lizards. Wallace then proposed a theory that several 100,000 years ago, Asia and Australia were connected to each other. However, as time passed, with the melting of ice and the rising of sea levels, Australia and Asia gradually drifted apart, and eventually the sea came in between, forming islands. The animals on the western side remained in Bali and the rest of Asia, while those on the eastern side stayed in Lombok and Australia. Because there was a sea in between, it was impossible for animals like tigers, elephants, or kangaroos to swim across the sea and go to the other side. So, one mystery was solved. Now the second mystery was, why don't birds cross this line? Why don't birds from Lombok come to Bali, or from Bali to Lombok? When Wallace closely analyzed the birds found on the islands of Bali and Lombok, he also found the answer to this question. Basically, both islands were inhabited by non-migratory birds. So birds can be classified into two types. Migratory birds, which cover thousands of kilometers in their journeys. For example, the Arctic tern, which travels approximately 90,000 kilometers from the South Pole to the North Pole every year, and Siberian cranes, which cover a distance of 5 to 10,000 kilometers to come from Russia to China, India, and Pakistan during winters. These birds have special wings that enable them to stay in the air over the sea for a long time, just like an airplane. They can spread their wings and travel vast distances non-stop. However, in Eastern Asia, and especially in Indonesia, the birds found are mostly non-migratory, meaning they fly within a range of 1 to 2 kilometers. Therefore, for these birds, crossing a 35-kilometer sea is impossible. So, we now understand that why animals and birds don't cross this line. The last mystery is that why the fish and other marine animals don't cross this line. Wallace couldn't find the answer to this question because at that time, the concept of plate tectonics had not yet been discovered. But in modern times, we all know that our planet is not static but dynamic. Beneath the seemingly smooth surface of the Earth, there are many movements. Below the surface of our Earth's crust, there are numerous plates that collide with each other, causing significant changes on our planet. For example, today we know that approximately 335 million years ago, all our continents were united, and our Earth had only one continent known as Pangaea. Then, due to the movement of tectonic plates, over the next several hundred million years, this entire continent broke apart into different continents. Similarly, some 45 million years ago, what we now call the Indian subcontinent was a part of Australian and African continent, and due to the movement of tectonic plates, it broke away from there and collided with the Eurasian plate. As a result of this collision, both plates were titled upwards, forming the largest mountain range in the world, which we now call the Himalayas. The points where these plates join are very volatile, and most earthquakes originate from these areas. That's why most earthquakes occurring in South Asia originate in the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush range. Similarly, the entire area of Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia has been subjected to a significant tectonic shift, resulting in frequent volcanic eruptions here. And that's why the water current in the sea between these islands is so strong that it is very difficult for any fish to cross it. Therefore, despite being only 35 kilometers apart, Komodo dragons cannot swim to Bali Island, nor can any fish swim to Lombok from Bali. So, these tectonic plate shifts are the biggest reason behind this invisible line. Although this theory emerged many years after Wallace's death, but the conclusion he drew nearly a century ago was absolutely correct. There are many other interesting and mysterious places in our world that we will explore in our upcoming videos. Just a few days ago, we made a video showing why ships avoid passing under South America. At the end of today's video, you will also find the link to that video. If you are enjoying our videos, please do subscribe to this channel. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care.